What are we here to discuss today? We're here to discuss the fact that global and inward investors into Greece, along with the supply chain, have committed to achieving net zero carbon by 2050. Investor commitment peaked in 2020 following a series of things, EU pressure, tenant demands, and the fact that industries across the globe have put ESG quite rightly front and centre in the wake of the pandemic as everybody works towards a recovery. Greece's location means that it is perfectly placed to reap the benefits of wind, solar and hydro energy. And the Greek Minister of Environment and Energy recently announced a new regulatory framework which will enable overseas investors to develop clean energy systems in Greece, develop local expertise and enhance sustainable growth in the region. So it goes without saying that development, property, real estate play a huge part in feeding into this. And we've got 4 speakers here today who are perfectly placed to discuss this. We have Julian, Director at Bennetts Associates. We have Kostas Lizakatos, Director at Buro Happold. We have OLGA ITSIOU, Technical Director at Dimand, and Georgios Filiopoulos, CEO of Enterprise Greece. What a fantastic selection of speakers we have. We're very lucky to have you all here today. And we were saying earlier, it's sort of various different parts of the supply chain, various different parts of being able to comment on this from a number of different perspectives, which is absolutely fantastic. And I know that we've got an idea of how we want the discussion to go to make sure that we're covering all of the key points. But before we do that, I think it would be really good for anyone who's tuned in to watch to hear a little bit more, just a minute or two from each of our speakers on how important this topic is to you, why it means so much, and why the time is now to be discussing this. So Julian, let's start with you.
Thank you, Emily, and yes, everyone. I'm delighted to say that we're already participating in the race to build back greener in Greece through the work that we've been doing with Olga and her team in Dimand in Athens, which has been both a privilege and a great pleasure. I mean, time is of the essence for addressing climate change, as we all know, and it's a global problem that needs global solutions, and it needs the very best minds to come together. And so for us, and I think for Olga and her team, and for others, collaboration is absolutely key to that. As you've said, Emily, Greece is very well placed to build back in a greener way, but it needs to do so quickly. And so we collectively need to make sure that the learning curve is as small as it can be. In the UK, we're pushing very hard with mainstream sustainability, and ourselves and Buro Happold have been doing that for 30 plus years. And so we're very keen to spread that influence globally. So as I say, collaboration with local knowledge, local expertise is absolutely essential, and we think there is a huge opportunity to do something really very profound there, both with new build, as we have been doing, but also there is for all of us around the world, there is the very, very significant challenge of the existing building stock. What are we going to do about that? So it'd be good to touch on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot to get through there, and we will do our very best. And can I ask the same question, please, to Kostas?
So I think that Julian has covered a lot of the things that I would like to say as well. But I think you touched the point, Emily. There is a rising focus on the building sector in view of the full decarbonization by 2050. The built environment remains a strategic domain for research and innovation. The priority is the design and construction of new or retrofitting of existing buildings to zero emissions building assets, and that's something that we want to focus. We need to focus. Greece gives perfect opportunities for renewable technology to be adapted because of the climate, because of the location, because also of the culture as well. That there is an adaptation. If there is a connectivity of the outdoor with the indoor environment. So great things to invest, and is a great place to invest as well.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And before we move on to Olga, I'm going to do a little polite reminder that anybody who is on the call, could they mute their microphones if they're not speaking, just because we're having a little bit of feedback. And it's always the way with these that the technology is actually the stumbling point. So if everybody just could keep muted if you're not speaking, that would be fantastic, and we'll get a bit less feedback. Olga, same question to you, please. Why is this topic so important to you, and why is the time very much now?
Well, that was covered by Julian and Kostis, but I'm just going to give you a small example. Greece has experienced the last few months severe climate conditions. We had a heat wave in July. We had extreme fires in the beginning of August, and we experienced some serious floods the last few days. So basically, I think this means that it has become imminent to focus on sustainability issues. And also Greece has a lot to offer in terms of existing building stock that needs retrofit. So there is a big opportunity there. And it is also a very good country that connects the outside to the inside, which means that workers can work best in such conditions.
Thank you very much for that. And finally, Yorgos, can we get the same response, not exactly the same response, but a response to the same question to you as well? Why is it so important to you to be on this panel talking about these issues today?
Well, I would like to say here that buildings account approximately for 40% of all the energy consumed. About 25% of all the greenhouse gases that are emitted in Europe. But therefore, it's very important to focus on building renovation if we want to achieve the target of 55% cut in greenhouse gas emissions by the end of this decade.
Thank you very much. And Yorgos, while we have you there, let's start with you when we're talking about some of these issues that we really wanted to cover. So let's start off with taking the subject of this panel and find out from you, first of all, what does it mean to build back greener in Greece? Where does Greece currently stand? And what are the objectives and targets for the future?
All right, I already mentioned the general picture. Now regarding Greece, taking in consideration the labor-intensive nature of the construction sector, which is largely dominated by local businesses here in Greece, building renovation, besides the focus on climate and on the goals that we have about climate, I'm sorry, I didn't mean climate, about greenhouse effects and following the goals that the European Union has set. Building renovations, besides that, building renovations in the country can also play a crucial role in the economic recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that's the main reason the European Commission published a new strategy to boost renovation. I think it was called a renovation wave for Europe or something like that. Green buildings, creating jobs and so on.
I'm going to just stop you just for 1 minute there. Sorry, we've got someone on the line who's not muted. We've got someone on the line who's not muted. Could you please mute? Thank you. We want to be able to hear what you're saying, Yorgos. So I just wanted to. Lovely. Thank you.
All right. Now, Greece already has a long-term strategy in place that will help the country to achieve economic transformation and broader sustainable development goals. As well as the targets that have been set by the Paris Agreement. Greece's National Energy and Climate Plan is particularly ambitious, and we hope that it will drastically reduce energy consumption, especially for thermal uses. The plan has set some key objectives, and amongst
I'm going to do it. I'm sorry, we've got someone on the line who's not muted. Could you please mute? Thank you very much. I'm sorry about this. Please continue. I'm so sorry. I'm going to now mute.
Now, Given that half of residential buildings in Greece are more than 40 years old, and the pace of construction of new buildings is relatively low, upgrading the energy efficiency of old buildings is of immense importance for the country. The Greek government has launched an 850 million program to improve energy efficiency in buildings. In addition to incentives for improving insulation, upgrading heating and cooling systems, and other things, for the first time, the program also supports investments in energy autonomy for buildings, such as renewable energy and energy storage systems. It also provides incentives for installation of charging points for electric vehicles, intelligent lighting systems, remotely controlled heating and cooling systems, elevator upgrades, among other things, and then many other things that you know, I don't remember right now. So
lovely, thank you very much, and thank you. That was expertly done as well, with a few interruptions along the way. So thank you very much, absolute pro there. That question is a big question, and it really embodies what we're talking about here. You know, what does it mean to build back greener? And I'd quite like to just open that question up to the rest of the panel as well, because I'm sure that everybody has an opinion. So could we possibly start with that? Let's start with Olga.
Right, okay. I'll take you back a bit to what we did as Dimand when we started developing the first LEED certified project in Greece. Back then, it was in the heart of the financial crisis. Such an innovative, unknown concept then seemed quite risky for many, but not for us. Our effort to certify the first LEED building in Greece came to fruition. And what we started then as pioneers influenced the market largely, and we changed the mindset of the industry from just, you know, building to green building. So notably, since then, from 0 square meters in 2012 of LEED certified buildings, we have reached over 1 million in 2021. Of which Dimand is responsible for more than 1/3. So we are on the right track, generally in Greece speaking, but you know, this is not enough. So the recipe basically to build back greener, I would say, is to, you know, have on board committed developers and investors that aim above and beyond compliance to sustainable issues. Also, what is very, very important is to think outside the box, go a little bit further. For instance, Dimand invests in the development of 2 photovoltaic parks with a capacity of over 88 megawatts, with the potential of those to supply some of our developments. We set our targets very early, together with our stakeholders, keeping in mind that every of our decisions affect the environmental footprint. And also, we take on board sustainability best practices, such as resiliency, safety systems, health and well-being, embodied carbon, and circular economy and life cycle approach to all of our projects. And in addition to all of those, what we also do is we try to educate the tenants of every building that we build. This is very important because we raise the awareness of all those people being involved, not just the stakeholders of every project, but the people that they become and they experience their everyday life in those developments. So this for us is very important. And in that essence, we embrace knowledge from abroad, and we invite experts like, Bennetts and, Julian's team to design together a greener tomorrow.
Lovely. Thank you very much. An excellent answer there. You mentioned Julian and Bennetts, and that gives us a perfect segue to ask Julian the same question about what it means to be, building back greener. And then we'll ask the same question to Kostas, and then we're going to go into some of the subcategories of what we mean when we talk about this. And there's already questions coming through that from our audience that really kind of do highlight some of the issues that I know that you guys are very keen to discuss. But Julian, building back greener, what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that's impressed us about working in Greece is, there is absolutely a recognition of the challenge that needs to be faced, and there is a desire to get on with that, with that challenge. And I think, in terms of Greece being an attractive location in which to invest, that's increasingly important. The world is becoming a very competitive place for investment, and so I think unless you can demonstrate to investors that their funding is secure in assets which are future-proof to deal with climate change, then the country is not really going to be able to compete. So there's a recognition of that, and I think also in terms of attracting the best occupiers and tenants, they are an increasingly well-informed bunch who, unless your facilities tick all of the right boxes, they ain't going to come. And so, I think Olga and her team, and other developers that we're aware of are absolutely grasping hold of, all of those kind of things. There is a shortage of supply of good stock in Athens. So, there's which is the city in which we have experience. But that's something that needs to be given additional emphasis. The car or the internal combustion engine is still a very dominant element of life in the big Greek cities, and so that will also need to be addressed. As I mentioned earlier, there is in this desire to catch up, I think there is also an open-mindedness about where that expertise comes from, and so we have been very keen to come in and definitely to collaborate, not to come in and preach, and not to come in and sort of try and pretend that we have all the answers, because we don't. But what we have enjoyed is collaborating with an open-minded local team who can, collectively we can get to a greener solution. So I think that's what it means for me.
Fantastic. And finally, Kostas, this building back greener, and also, Julian mentioned something there about this collaboration, which is an excellent point as well. So I'd really like to hear from you on the whole building back greener element, but also the collaboration and how you found that and what that means to you, particularly because I know that you spend some of your time in London, in the UK, and some of your time in Athens. So it would be good to get your perspective on that.
So I will touch on this as well, but I want to take some of the things that Yorgos and Olga mentioned. So about the stock of houses, of existing buildings that we have in Athens and they require retrofitting. And also what Olga mentioned is the awareness of having to use the sustainability assessment tools. I think it's great, but in order to start thinking more greener and sustainable and to meet those 2050 targets that we have for decarbonization of our cities, I think we need to go a step forward, and that's a step further. And this is mainly to focus about how we will have a social sustainability development strategy for our city. And this comes starting from our buildings and the behaviors in our buildings, and then focusing on a wider city spectrum. I have been working, as you mentioned, for the last year. I split my time between Athens and London. And I have found that the Greek market and the Greek engineers, the Greek architects, they're really open to have discussions with international knowledge and share opinions and thoughts. And I think it's vice versa. We're learning out of the local developers, the local architects, the local investor, but also we bring in some knowledge that we have from the overseas markets where we are, and where some things in particular on sustainability that have been advanced a little bit further. I think for me the really interesting thing is the cultural element and the from Greece, and how people are behaving, how people are living within their office space, within their house, and the connectivity that it creates between the indoor and outdoor. And I think that's something that is unique to Greece. It doesn't exist in a lot of places around the world. And it is a unique way to help you evolve your design and customize it to the needs of the local community.
Fantastic, thank you very much. 4 excellent answers there, as I was expecting. And it really kind of gives the sense of what this means from each of those perspectives. Now, well, I think actually all of you mentioned there about existing stock. And we've got, I think, 2 questions already in as well about incentivizing investors to acquire listed buildings for renovation. And this is something that obviously is very close to all of your hearts, but it's clearly something as well that people who are watching this want to understand more about. So Julian, can we start with you on that? Because I know that's something that you feel very strongly about, you know, sustainable design and the discussion around retrofit and net zero and what that means.
Yeah, absolutely, Emily. I mean, as I said earlier, we've been involved in sustainability with bureaus for, you know, sort of 30 plus years. And I think our focus is really about bringing sustainability into the mainstream. And, you know, we were sort of one of the first architects in the world to have science, you know, approved science-based targets for what, you know, for how we operate and how our buildings are designed. And you know, one of our key focuses at the moment, having looked at sustainability in new build for, you know, a long way through, and a lot of the work that we've done at King's Cross, that's how we came to meet Olga and her team initially, through their interest in the, you know, both that development but also the work that we had done there, with some very low carbon solutions. Increasingly our mind turns to what it means into what the agenda means in terms of retrofit. And there's a scheme that we're doing in central London at the moment called Timber Square, which has a very significant retrofit component to it, but it's aiming to be, you know, one of the first net zero carbon schemes in central London. And so there's a whole range of techniques that we're employing there that we would like to be able to explore with people in the Greek market, to see which of them are applicable and can be, you know, thinking can be transferred across. I mean, it's fair to say that the work that we've been doing in Athens is a step along the journey, but there is a long way still to go, and many things still to look at. And I think, you know, sort of a really concerted effort on retrofit would be a good part of that. But Olga and her team are doing some amazing work in retrofit down at Piraeus, which I've had the privilege of visiting. I'm sure she'd like to talk about that in a moment. But I mean, in terms of how relevant is international expertise, I think if it's applied in the right way, as I said, in a truly collaborative way, then, you know, it can be spread, you know, pretty widely. I mean, for example, we're doing work with Buro Happold in Southeast Asia at the moment, looking at a scheme there which is net zero water, net zero carbon, net zero waste, and LEED platinum. So trying to tick all of those kind of key boxes, but in a climate which is fundamentally different to the one that we have and fundamentally different to the one in Athens. So it's all about taking your skills, but listening and working, you know, collaboratively.
Thank you very much. Well, you set the stage there nicely for Olga. So Olga, let's hear from you and about a bit more detail around some of the schemes and the developments that you've been working on, and what Julian was mentioning there, you know, the great things that you've been doing in terms of retrofit as well. We'd love to hear.
Okay, well, yeah, Julian mentioned the Piraeus Port Plaza project, which was a regeneration program for us, quite big. And there we had a holistic approach, a vision to, you know, make the whole area, the whole district of Agios Dionysios. Agios Dionysios is a district in Piraeus, and it's 150 meters away from the biggest transportation hub in Greece. So there was, you know, a big challenge there and a big opportunity for us to create and reform and regenerate a whole new area. So what was previously a deserted industrial area changed a lot. And I'm going to describe a bit later, you know, how it was changed. But I'm gonna mention, and I would like to point out that, you cannot have a holistic approach, and you cannot, make something big unless you work closely with the local environment, the municipalities or the local government, or, whoever that, body is that, has to work with you in order to create this, shared vision for, larger areas of intervention and for generation projects. So small scale is important, but, being able to make, synergies and work on a bigger scale, makes a big difference. So back to ITSIOU Dionysius in Piraeus, we started that in 2016, and it has been evolving since then. The area was transformed and now accommodates nearly 10,000 employees in 85,000 square meters above ground of office areas. We have also added to that hotels, cafes and restaurants and galleries, and new residential units are being added gradually. This project has another few years to, go on, adding quite a lot of, different uses, but it has changed significantly. And we took it a step further by discussing with the municipality to donate, for Dimand to donate the studies for generating and transforming the public areas, the public streetscape, their infrastructure, the street lighting, the bicycle lanes, and basically 10 very important streets, transform them and make them more friendly to the users, the residents, and the people that, work in the area. So now, as Julian said, he was quite privileged to, be able to be shown around the area. It has become a different area. And we are also retrofitting Piraeus Tower, which is just around the corner from ITSIOU Dionysius, which is the second biggest tower in Athens. It is 84 meters high with 22 floors. And we are going to retrofit that completely. And this is going to be finished in 2023 at some point. So we are expanding the area a bit further. So this is large scale for us, and it is important to go large scale because otherwise, small is good, but it's not, you need to change a lot of smaller things to make an impact. But if developers and investors, make a big effort on larger areas, this will have a much greater impact on sustainability and greener cities.
Thank you very much. And I know that we're sort of moving into the area of discussion now, which is around, attracting foreign investors. And it's an interesting, it's come up throughout the conversation. And I know that you just touched on it there, Olga, and I want to come back to you on that actually in a minute around sort of the wider strategies and what developers and investors need to be doing to be committed, and to also make that public, a public commitment so that people know. I'm going to come back though as well to Yorgos, and then we're going to move on to a question around sustainable design that I want to speak to Kostas about. So we're on track, which is brilliant. But Yorgos, it would be fantastic to hear from you around this attracting investment and how that plays into the trade and investment agenda and government incentives. And there's a couple of questions as well. It's all very nice and it's nice synergy here. There's already some questions that have come in about that as well. So could you give us a bit of an overview on how that side of things is going to work and indeed is working?
Sure, thank you, Emily. Greece's Green Deal is one of the most ambitious programs worldwide. This is my impression. And over the past few years, Greece has undertaken a dramatic transformation in its energy sector. And I think it's the most dramatic since the electrification of the country. Significant reforms have reshaped the energy market, and they have made it more competitive. And many major infrastructure projects are underway to connect the grid to Europe and the Greek mainland to the islands. The emphasis now is on renewable energy, and the new frameworks on e-mobility and energy efficiency create an entirely new energy landscape that we believe that will drive developments into a totally different future. And in the past few years here in our organization, we have seen many foreign investors responding to these incentives with a series of new projects, particularly, as I said before, in renewable energy and e-mobility. Now, Greece's Recovery and Resilience Plan, which is a 30.5 billion program, and it has been dubbed Greece 2.0, has been very positively received, and was the first plan to be endorsed by the European Commission. As one of the 4 pillars to this program, we have green development. The plan seeks to mobilize significant private sector resources by using public-private partnerships as a method of materializing public investments. It also uses energy service companies to implement energy efficiency projects in the public sector. And it also uses various financial instruments to co-finance private investments. For the green transition, the plan foresees the interconnection, as I said, of the Greek islands, the installation of millions of smart telemetric energy meters, a massive program to improve energy efficiency through renovation of residential buildings, commercial and industrial spaces, as well as public sector buildings and infrastructure in general. It also includes the development of publicly accessible charging infrastructure for electric cars, and the reform of urban planning with the introduction of zoning plans that will offer clear land use rules for almost, I think, 80% of the country. Greece has made the transition to a low carbon economy and towards a new energy model a high priority. And we believe that this transformation has already been driving developments into a new future, as I said.
Thank you very much. The problem with muting is you've got to race to unmute before you can say anything, and it leaves a little gap. But anyway, thank you very much. That was fantastic. We've got lots of questions coming through, which is brilliant. So what I'm going to do is I want to get to speak to Kostas about some of the kind of the data and optimizing performance issues. So before we do that, I'm very quickly, and I see Kostas is unmuted, ready and raring to go. Olga, just a couple of minutes on the sort of overarching and really sort of important moves that developers and investors need to make in order to make this commitment visible. If we could keep it quite short and sweet, that'd be fantastic. Then we'll move on to Kostas to talk about some of the next issues, and then don't worry, everybody watching, we will get on to your questions after that. So Olga, over to you.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Yes, it is very important to work with co-investors that are being sustainable. I mean, for us, we have to say that we're very happy to have on our side EBRD, HIG, Prodea, which are organizations that not only support and promote sustainable developments, but they set new sustainability goals with us. So this is very important, but without investors that are aware of sustainability issues and sustainability, as an essence, it is impossible to move on. Gladly, we as developers, feel very happy that, whenever we suggested to a client, to an investor, or a tenant to move forward to, being extra sustainable, they all, took it on board. So that means that I think by being very simple and very open about these things to all the relevant stakeholders, I think that everything is possible. In terms of investors, though, or new companies that they want to invest in Greece, I think, as Yorgos said, Greece has been doing quite a lot lately. And to be honest with you, we are waiting to see more investors coming in to invest in Greece.
Lovely, thank you very much. Right, Kostas, the time has come. Let's talk about sustainable design and what it means in Greek context in Greece and how it's improving major cities and metropolises such as Athens. And I know that you've got some stuff that you can talk about, optimizing performance, use of buildings and analysing data.
Yes, I could touch on this. And the only item that I would like to fill into Yorgos and Olga's points is that the developers in Greece, I believe, the majority of them, they have a high sustainability agenda. We privileged to work with Lambda Development and in one of the biggest investments that I have currently in Greece. And the sustainability targets, they're quite high for international standards. So I think for new developments, we're in really safe hands in Greece. And what is happening with the retrofit? I think the retrofit is a really interesting topic. And buildings, we need to improve the facades. We need to improve the HVAC systems. We need to improve their BMS and what we record in all of this. And as Yorgos mentioned earlier, the 70% of the buildings in Greece that will be retrofitted, that will be required to be retrofitted. I think in European Union there is an estimation that 40% of the energy consumed in a country is coming from the buildings. So the agenda to retrofit those buildings is really big. How can we retrofit a building? What is the right approach? And that's the discussion that we need to have. And I think before we start retrofitting buildings, we need to read the data that we have collected for this building, so we can apply what we did recently a few months ago in Brussels. We had an old Citroën factory that the client decided to convert it to a cultural center, which would have a component offices, a component ateliers, a component of museum and a library. And what we decided to do at this stage was to take recordings and readings for all the climatic conditions within the building. So before we started doing the work, we wanted to understand how the current building is behaving. So we did recordings for a year. We took this data and then we apply those data when we start designing our system. So instead of taking the peak design conditions that would probably occur for 2 hours over a year, we start adapting our buildings to be in a more efficient manner, to operate in a more efficient manner, and design on design conditions that will be frequent into the building. That your systems, they don't need to be oversized, and that provides economies on construction, but also provides economies on operation. And I think another important thing is to make sure that we adapt in the right BMS. But it's not only to put the BMS. I think Olga touched this on her opening, that Dimand is committed to educate the users of building and try to provide training. I think that's absolutely the right approach. We need to understand the systems, how they're working, in order to start reading this data and and create buildings that will dynamically respond to the needs, to the users, to the occupancy, to the demands that you have. So you don't start consuming a lot of energy without having the demand. I think all these things, all these areas is areas that we could provide our support and collaborate with developers, with end users, and from the early stages of a design. And if we implement this from the early stages, I think the contribution to the 2050 it will be more achievable, basically, to achieve to go towards these targets.
Thank you very much for that, Justice. So, Julian, I just wanted to sort of finish up on that point as well by throwing that question out to you, or sort of elements of that question. I know that you have lots of thoughts on sustainable design that you wanted to go over as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with what Costa's saying about a culture of measurement and sharing information between professionals. Don't guard it jealously. You know, if we're going to solve the problem of climate change, we have to collaborate with information as well as, you know, with sort of professional relationships. I just wanted to sort of throw a little sort of, you know, an example of, you know, our contribution to the you know, the race to build back greener thus far. The project that we've been doing with OLGA and Dimand, it's called Embodied in Athens. And what I would say about that is it's a good step in the right direction, but there is, you know, more to do. Maybe next time, Olga, with the next project. We're looking at LEED certification there. Maybe there's a discussion about, you know, sort of taking the LEED certification to a higher level, or maybe looking at living building challenge. That might be something really interesting. We've focused a lot on really sensible base engineering, so create a simple product which is robust, but also is respectful of the local climate. One of the first things that somebody said to me when working on a project in Athens was, they said, you need to abide by the rule of the 3 S's, which is shade, shade, shade. And so we took that on wholeheartedly, and so the building itself is completely shaded, not just the windows but the solid areas as well, so the fabric doesn't get too hot. We've avoided the architect's Achilles heel of too much glass by restricting the amount of that, being responsible, and then trying to create a much greener city. You know, so Athens isn't particularly green. There's some parts which are very beautiful, but you know, so we've tried to turn this part of, you know, so on Sigrid Avenue into something which is somewhat of an oasis, with, you know, greening of the streetscape, but also greening of the buildings, greening of the roofs. We're using concrete, we have to, for seismic reasons, but you know, there are opportunities that we would like to explore further down the line. And I think, you know, next steps, absolutely net zero carbon, low embodied carbon, design for manufacture and assembly, and somebody put in the chat feed there about well certification as well. That's absolutely something that, you know, is increasingly important to occupiers. There was also another point there about the cost of sustainable accreditation and the cost of sustainable design. And, you know, yes, that's an issue, but I would counter by saying that unless we all embrace that, then occupiers and investors are going to go elsewhere. So it's got to start to be, it has to be built into the base case.
Thank you very much for that. And you started to tackle some of those questions, which is fantastic. So we've got just a few minutes left, and I would like to get to some of those questions. So I think a couple of the main points that have come up, as Julian highlighted there, comments around LEED certification, well certification, all certifications, and BREEAM, of course, and also around this point about cost. And I'd like to open it up to all of our panelists, really, to come in on either of those points. You know, what's the situation around LEED, BREEAM, well, how is that going, and how far in the future is, you know, sort of widespread adoption of that, and what would you say to people who are concerned about the costs of what this all entails? So I don't know if anybody wants to go first on that. I know that, Julian, you've answered a couple of those questions, so maybe, I don't know if I'm having a look to see if anybody's raring to go. The sign is always when somebody unmutes, and I know that they're desperate to talk. Lovely, Olga.
Right. No, I'm happy to talk about these certifications. Well, obviously, yes, they do cost, and especially now with, you know, version 4 of LEED. What is now LEED Gold is previous version of 3, the Platinum. So yes, cost has increased, and it will be increasing, you know, year after year for, you know, certification purposes. But it's something that we have definitely need to do. It's a way of, for investors, for tenants, for everybody. It's something that, you know, gives just the guarantee and the comfort of somebody has thought of this building in many, many aspects, environmental, indoor air quality, location-wise, all of these, issues that, LEED addresses. The other thing that is very important, but it's very difficult to achieve because you need to have the tenant with you in order to do that, is the WELL certification, which is something that we have been trying to do for a lot of years. And the first time that we're going to do it as well, core and shell, is the Tower of Piraeus. And we are currently working on another project that, fingers crossed, we're going to work with the tenant in order to certify it with WELL as well. Certifications are good. They help, tenants to realize that you're doing something in a good way, you're doing something right. The cost is an issue always, but as Julian said, that, everybody needs to embrace that, because it's something that we all need to do. So the tenants need to embrace that, as well as the investors.
Thank you very much.
Just one point on this, on the accreditations. I think that it is a fantastic tool to track the progress of the sustainability targets of a project. However, we have to stress that it is coming to a requirement from many corporations that they come into Greece, that you require to have this accreditation in order to make a lease of a building. So it's part of the sustainability strategy of lots of organizations at the moment. And we're going to see, I think, even existing buildings that will start seeking LEED accreditation. When you retrofit something, they may be required this accreditation. So important to keep the momentum on these accreditation systems.
Thank you very much. Oh, Julian, have you just unmuted? Have you got something to add, or were you always unmuted?
No, I was just going to say, I just spotted in the chat feed a very good point that, LEED certification is important to achieving a more sustainable, greener future. The focus in those tends to be on the operational side of carbon, whereas increasing the embodied side of carbon is really, really important. And so just to touch on that for a moment, the big focus at the moment, certainly in the UK, and it sounds like increasingly in Greece, on the retention of stock, is absolutely to do with a drive towards a lower embodied carbon. As we get better with the operational side of buildings, the size of the pie is reducing, but the size of the pie that is occupied by the embodied component that it takes to actually create the structure and then refit it and move it forward is increasingly important. And I think that's where a majority of our focus is on at the moment. And so I think yes, that's a really big topic that needs to be part of the agenda that as Olga was referring to, and really get underneath the skin of that, again, with not just some warm words, but some objective measurement. We're doing a lot of work in terms of measuring embodied carbon. The Facebook headquarters that we just completed at King's Cross puts a big downward pressure on the embodied carbon, and as well as a small sports hall building that we'd be doing there as well. And we'd be happy. Well, I think if people look on our website, there's a news piece about how that is actually being shared publicly, as I say, a part of that agenda to sort of unselfishly move the world forward and make sure that we all get to where we need to get to. So yeah, embodied carbon, really, really important, and that would definitely go on that list of things to look at in future schemes.
Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of our session. We've got about 5 minutes left, and that is incorporating the extra sort of 15 minutes onto what was, at the bottom end of things, for the 45-minute session. So I won't keep people longer than the hour, but we do have a few minutes left, and we've got more questions coming through. So we've got more questions around, let me just have a look. This is the problem with questions coming through, as I'm reading them as I go. So a lot of references in LEED and other certification schemes. However, in a market like Greece, with mostly small developers and small developing sites, is it realistic to expect developers to undertake LEED and BREEAM assessments? There are other ways to demonstrate and ensure a climate-friendly building, e.g. Conducting an LCA and local authorities setting up whole life carbon benchmarks, similar to the New London Plan, for example? Would something similar be viable, do you think, in the Greek reality? So that's a very good question. It's a bit of a kind of a question back on what we were talking about here around the importance of LEED and BREEAM, you know, and I think that some of the points have sort of been touched upon there, but does anybody want to come back on that question directly? You know, are there other options in a market where developers are mostly small, with small sites? Ooh, whoever asked that question might have flummoxed our panel. Well,
I'll do it. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Oh,
I find it difficult to be done to do something else than, you know, certification, because it's not, you know, if the local government does something, you know, in order to assess, you know, the sustainability aspect, you know, of a small building, then this will not be recognizable. So I don't think it actually, you know, makes sense. I mean, even LEED in small projects is not something that would cost that much. But on a larger scale, and basically according to, you know, what you want to achieve, because you can go for certified, you can go for silver, gold, or platinum. I mean, you can choose what you want to be assessed in. And just to add something to, you know, what Julian said earlier on, LEED addresses embodied carbon. So this is a new thing on LEED, but yes, this is something that is being done in Greece lately, quite a lot in buildings, embodied carbon.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Does anybody else want to come in on that question that Olga definitely stepped up and took it on? No? Okay. Well, look, we've got 3 minutes left before we hit our hour, and I was saying to the panelists earlier, I really talked a good game. I said I'm really strict on timing, so now I can't step back from that. I'm going to have to, you know, live up to my reputation and make sure that we finish on time. So with 3 minutes and 4 panelists, that gives each panelist around about 20 to 30 seconds to give their closing message. What is it you'd like your audience to leave today with at the forefront of their minds? Olga, I'm going to start with you because you're still up on my screen. So sorry that you answered that question and now you've been put on the spot. It's not fair, but what's your closing message?
Okay, what can I say? Being green is not just a trend, it's a commitment. So yeah, it's a commitment to a sustainable lifestyle. Let's stick to it, basically.
Lovely, thank you very much. Kostas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kostas. Same question to you. What's your closing message?
I think that the property owners and operators struggle with the efficiency of buildings, and the productivity and well-being of people is really linked to the performance of a building. So building greener, building more efficient, building in line with well, if you can say, or social, so they're taking into account the social aspects in your design, then you create a more productive workplace, more happy place to live.
Lovely, thank you very much. And Yorgos, that to you as well. What is your message, your final message to leave our audience with today?
Green development in general and green development in buildings and infrastructure is the way to the future. And the Greece has proven with the recent steps that it has taken that it moves towards the right direction.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And finally, Julian, final thoughts to our viewers and listeners today.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, so building back greener, we've spoken about exclusively here. I think we have always seen green sustainable design as just as a one component piece of just better design, and so maybe the objective is build back better, not just build back greener. And I think in Greece we're you know, Greece is starting to do that. We're trying to do our part to help that. So I think watch this space and see what's possible.
Thank you very much. The sign of an excellent panel discussion is that the questions are still coming in thick and fast, but we are at 13:59 and therefore I'm going to be really mean and say that we have to cut off somewhere. But thank you very much for the questions, and I'm sure that there will be opportunities for you to contact some of our panelists. There is a link that's gone up in the chat box there. If you want to hear more about any of this, more about Bennetts Associates or Buro Happold, you can register your details, and all the details are up there at the side of this conversation. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining us today. I knew it was going to be interesting, but it really was incredibly insightful and exactly, I think, what our audience tuned in to hear. And we've got so much interesting information from so many different perspectives. And it's, build back greener and build back better. Thank you very much for joining us.